Hello, thank you for watching my channel today. My name's Sarah and my channel is called Your True Shelf, and I have a haul video for you today. I haven't filmed a haul video for a really long time because I've been trying somewhat unsuccessfully not to add any new books to my TBR, and I have got new books to add onto my TBR, but I haven't bought hardly any of these, and so I feel like I have some sort of defence as to why this has happened. So I've been gifted most of these books. I have bought the odd one, so I'll tell you which ones I have been gifted and which ones I've bought. So if I start with the ones that I have actually bought. So the first one is a book that was on the long list for the Women's Prize, which I didn't really hear many people talk about. And I picked it up and had a flick through, and I thought that I would enjoy it. And this is A Trace of Sun by Pam Williams. The cover is really beautiful. This is about a young boy called Rafe who is in Grenada with his mum, and his mum leaves him behind and goes off to England to try and find a better life. Rafe's dad and Scylla's husband are in England already, and she goes there to try and, like I say, build a better life for them, and they don't see each other for 7 years. And then when they're reunited, they're not the same. They don't know each other the same. There's this big rift that's been caused by the emotional trauma of the separation. And it's about their family life in England, I believe, after the separation. And when I did have a little look through, I could even read in a couple of pages here and there. I was quite drawn in. And so I think that this book will be a really, really good one. The next book that I got was on the Audible sale, and I do tend to look through. Sometimes there's pages and pages of books in the $2.99 sale. I found this book on the last page, I think, and I really wanted to read it anyway because it was given 5 stars by Sarah from Freshly Read Books, and she loved this book, and so I really wanted to read it after hearing her talk about how much she loved it. And that is Bird by Anne Lamott, which I hadn't heard of before. And this is a book about writing. It's a non-fiction book. And the summary on Storygraph, the last piece says, if you have ever wondered what it takes to be a writer, what it means to be a writer, what the contents of your school lunches said about what your parents were really like, this book is for you. From faith, love and grace to pain, jealousy and fear, Lamott insists that you keep your eyes open and then shows you how to survive. And always, from the life of the artist, she turns to the art of life. So I am really excited to read that book, and now I have it on audio. And the last book that I believe that I've bought is the third book in the Wolf Den trilogy by Elodie Harper. I listened to the first book on Audible, and it was one of my books of the year, I think the year before last. And then I have book 2 and now book 3, which I need to crack on and read. So that's set in Pompeii, and it's about a girl called Amara who's working as a sex slave in Pompeii leading up to the unknown, by them, eruption of Mount Vesuvius. So I don't know how that is going to fit into the books. The next books that I acquired are ones that one of my friends was giving away, and she said to me, do you want to have a look through and see if any of these are ones that you want? And I wasn't just going to take them because they were free. I wanted to make sure they were genuinely books I wanted, and so I chose 3 of them. The first one is a book by Brene Brown, who I am a massive fan of. For anyone who's watched this channel probably already has heard me talk about Brene Brown before, and this is one of the books of hers that I don't own, which is I Thought It Was Just Me But It Wasn't. And this is basically the little what's this called, the bit underneath the main title, the subtitle, that's the word I'm looking for, is Making the Journey from What Will People Think to I Am Enough. So it's talking basically about how we're conditioned to care about what people think and to try and strive to be better all the time, and how if you're imperfect that equates to being inadequate. And it basically talks about how you can let go of those unhelpful thoughts and be comfortable in being imperfect. So she's definitely anti-perfectionist, and she says we're all imperfect and we need to embrace that and realise that nobody's perfect and stop trying to strive for perfection all the time, because it's really just kind of putting on an armour which stops you from experiencing life to the full. So that's that one, which I'm looking forward to a lot. Then I have another non-fiction. This is Mantelpieces by Hilary Mantel, and it's a hardback edition. This is 20 essays, which are sometimes, I think it says, sometimes reviews, essays and pieces of memoir written over time span of 3 decades. And obviously we all know Hilary Mantel from the Wolf Hall trilogy, but I haven't read any other of her works, and I really loved the 2 of the Wolf Hall trilogies that I've read. I would probably should go back and do the whole trilogy in one go, because I read the first 2. The second one was probably, I don't even know how many years ago, getting on, I think Faye was about 2 or something, so it's probably about 8 years ago since I read the second one, and I've never read the third one, so I'd really like to read those. But in the meanwhile, it is also really nice to see what other things Hilary Mantel has written, especially as sadly we know she's not going to be writing any more books now that she's died. So I really think this is going to be an interesting reflection, and there's her memoir. I've listened to the sample of her memoir and it's fantastic, so this should be really well written and enjoyable, I'm sure. And then the final book that I was given by my friend was George Eliot's The Mill on the Floss. I haven't read any Eliot before, but I think Joe and I are planning to buddy read this in July, and it's a bit of a chunky book, but it's not as big as Middlemarch. So yeah, I can see if George Eliot is for me before I embark on the mammoth of Middlemarch. But I don't think it's going to be too hard to read. I don't really know anything about what it's about, but I'm guessing it's about small village life in the Victorian times. And we'll see how I get on. I shall report back when I've started it. So that's the 3 that I was kind of given by my friends. And then I had a very exciting thing happen about a fortnight ago, is that I was lucky enough to go and have dinner with my lovely friend Simon Savage of Savage Reads. So we've been friends for a long time. We think 15, 16 years. And this was the first time that we'd actually met. He came to Norwich for work where I live. And so we decided to meet up and we went and had dinner together. And we literally chatted until they closed and kicked us out. So we had a lovely time. And he brought me a bag of books, which was so kind. The other stack that I have here is the books that he bought with him to give to me. So the first one is Wayward by Emilia Hart, and this book is one that I recognised when I added it to my Storygraph and saw the other editions. I recognised the other cover more than this and saw that I had actually seen other people talk about this, and when I looked at their ratings, lots of people have given it very high ratings, which is great. I'll just read the back because it's quite short and I think it's better than I can explain it myself. So it says it's about 3 women over 5 centuries and one spellbinding story. In the present day, Kate flees a traumatic relationship to the Cumbrian cottage she inherited from her great aunt, but the cottage hides secrets of its own. In 1942, Violet rebels against her father's ideas of a proper young lady until he takes matters into his own hands. In 1619, Altha is on trial for witchcraft, implicated in the gruesome death of a local man. 3 women they tried to cage, but wayward women belong to the wild and they cannot be tamed. I like the sound of that one. Oh, and it was a Between the Covers book, which is a TV show on BBC with Sarah Cox, which is a TV book club. The next one is one that everyone will be very familiar with because it was on the Women's Prize long list and sadly didn't make the shortlist. And this is Ordinary Human Failings by Megan Nolan. So I think we've all come across this book multiple times from the Women's Prize, but it's one that I haven't read. I've nearly finished the shortlist, but there's several that I didn't read on the long list, and this is one of them. And most people really love this book. The next one is one that has been quite popular and lots of people have talked about it, and I've wanted to read it myself but I don't own, and that is Birnam by Eleanor Catton. I read The Luminaries 10 or so years ago and absolutely loved it, but I haven't read anything else by Eleanor Catton. This is about a piece of land in South Island of New Zealand where there's been a landslide and there's a piece of land which has now been abandoned. And there's an activist group called Birnam who want to take ownership of this land. But there's also a billionaire, who is an American, who also has an interest in the place. And they don't know whether they can trust him or not. So I think it's about eco-activism and things like that. So definitely want to give this one a go. The next one is one which was on the non-fiction long list for the Women's Prize, which I was really sad it didn't make the shortlist because I was really interested in it. I wanted to read the physical book rather than the audio because I thought it would be important to have the family trees and things like that to refer back to. And this is Young Queens by Leah, Redmond, Chang. So it's so lovely that I got this one because I wanted to read it anyway. I find history really interesting. And this is about Catherine de' Medici, Elizabeth de Valois and Mary, Queen of Scots, and their 3 lives. And I listened to the audio sample, found it very engaging, but I know from reading things like Wolf Hall, having this is invaluable when you're trying to work out who's who, and often people have the same names as well because there was lots of names which were used very commonly then, and so it can be quite difficult to work out without having the family tree. So it was definitely a physical one, and so it's really lovely that Simon bought this for me, but also it's got some photos in as well, which is cool. And then finally, one that I have never heard of, which is this one, The Housekeepers by Alex Hay. The subtitle is Revenge Will Be Served at Midnight. So this is sort of like I think it's like a gothic cosy crime. So it says, upstairs, Madam is planning the party of the season. All eyes are on the grandest house in Mayfair as the countdown begins to their lavish summer ball. Everything must be perfect, but with the chandeliers gleaming and the cellars stocked, local housekeeper Mrs. King is suddenly dismissed. Downstairs, the servants are plotting the heist of the century. The clock strikes 12 on the night of the ball. Mrs. King will return to strip the house of its riches, right under the nose of her former employer. And she knows just who to recruit to pull off the impossible, a bold alliance of women with nothing left to lose and every reason for revenge. Oh, that sounds really good, doesn't it? So, yeah, that's the last one. I'm just going to check my bullet journal to make sure that I haven't missed anything out. I think I've got all of them. Let's just have a little look and check. There's one more, which I'm not sure if I've previously mentioned on a Friday read, so apologies if I have, but that is Cleopatra and Frankenstein by Coco Mellors. The reason that I got this, and I've got this on Kindle, is because Nicole from Nicole's Nook was so positive about it and she loved it so much. And she then went on to pre-order Coco Mellors' new book, which is coming out really soon. And so I thought when it was on a 99p deal, I thought, oh, I definitely want to try that. And it's about Cleo, who is a young woman who's in New York. Her visa's running out. She's going to lots of parties. I think her life feels a little bit sort of out of control. And she meets a guy called Frank, who is 20 years older than her when she goes to buy some cigarettes. And they fall into this whirlwind romance. And I think they both have ways they could benefit from the romance. But I think it sounds very messy, and it's been compared to, on the blurb, to Sally Rooney. And so things are never straightforward with relationships like that. So I think that it will be a really interesting book and I'm excited to read it. I hope that there are less communication difficulties than there are in Sally Rooney's books, because one thing that does frustrate me in her books is that the characters often don't say what they think or mean to each other at all, and it causes these huge misunderstandings and fallouts and things which could all have been saved by an honest conversation. So I hope there's better communication in it than that. And yeah, it's one that I'm really looking forward to read because of how much Nicole loved it. So I think that's everything. There's quite a few books there, but like I said, the only ones I bought were Bird by Bird, the third in the Wolf Den trilogy, and that's it out of all of those books. Although, actually, no, there is one more, which I haven't written down in my bullet journal yet. So yesterday, I genuinely accidentally bought a book. I know that sounds impossible, but in my defence, I was listening to Audible samples from my wish list because my wish list had got out of control. And I have quite a few credits on Audible, but I thought I'd go through my wish list and cull the ones, because often I add things to my audio wish list as I hear people talk about them on booktube, and then when I go and listen to the sample, sometimes I don't like the narrator, sometimes I don't think I'd like the book. So I was having a good listen to quite a few samples, and while I was listening to one, I then needed to do some hoovering. So I was holding my phone like this under my chin. And then when I turned the hoover off and looked at it, it said, "Thank you for your purchase." And I was like, what purchase? And it turns out that I'd managed to, by holding it like this, I'd managed to buy this audiobook. And I thought, well, I know that I can return books on Audible, so I'll just return it. But it turns out you can only return them if you buy them with a credit. And my cheek had managed to buy it with actual cash, so I paid $7.99 for this audiobook. I didn't mean to buy it at all. So that was a genuine, I think that's the most accidental way I've ever bought a book. And the book was Rivers of London by Ben Aaronovitch. I know that Heather from Too Many Heathers absolutely loves this series, and that's why it ended up on my wish list. And yeah, so I hope I like it. I have no idea whether I'm going to like it or not. It's the start of a really big series, so I guess if I do like it, then I have lots of things to enjoy, and if I don't, I guess I don't go any further with the series. It's just a bit annoying because if I was going to spend $7.99 on a book, I'd have chosen one that was like top of my list. But it is what it is. It happened. There's no point in me arguing the fact that it happened, because it did, so I have to accept it. And hopefully it might just be fate telling me that I will love this series, so we'll see. But anyhow, if you've read any of them, I'd really love to hear what you think about them, or if you think I should prioritise any of them over others, that would also be nice to know. I hope that I will be able to get to them soon, because I am having a chance to read more by whim. Maybe about 50% of my reading is by whim at the moment, which is better than previous years. So yes, let me know what you're reading. Let me know any bookish news you have, anything you want to tell me in the comments would be lovely, and I will speak to you all soon. Bye.